Greetings, everyone, and my fellow heretics. This is the Free Grace Heretic Show, and I am Kurt, your host. Today, for us in America, we are celebrating Labor Day. Well, Labor Day is consistently basically a day that, especially for married men, they get a day off, and then they get to do the honey-do list. So that's what Labor Day is all about. Anyways, want to welcome everyone and being a part of the show. Today is our Q&A program. Not sure how many we'll get in today and things like that. It just depends if people are still active doing things, whatever, or if maybe getting home and saying, hey, I just want to relax and listen, or we'll listen or something like that. We'll see how things go as we go on. Again, if you do have any questions, put in at Q or at TLS or hey Kurt, something like that. Especially if there's a conversation happening. That way I know you want it directed to me, because if it's in a conversation, I start skipping over just because I can't follow it that quickly and things like that. Now, if you want to come and be a part of the show, and again, be glad to have you. We have on YouTube where you do have the what is it? The StreamYard address. I'm putting in the StreamYard address now in the chat also for those that may be utilizing a different way, and they can see the chat because again, and in doing that, again, if you do come on board, again, when you're in backstage, I do need to see your face. And then when bring you on board, we can go ahead and you can go ahead and just do your icon. Now, so anyways, as we go on, I'm not seeing any questions and things like that. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to continue on with the questions to deacons and things like that. I'm dealing with the bigger category. And actually this one probably deals even a lot more than has a lot more questions than the previous ones, even to the elders and stuff. So we'll go through that. But again, before we get started on that, I wanted to have here, and let me bring it on, is read 1 Timothy chapter 3, 8 through 13 again. It's important that we know what the criteria of what a deacon is. Okay, it says, deacons likewise must be dignified, not double-tongued, not addicted to much wine, not greedy for dishonest gain. It doesn't mean you can't have gain, you just aren't greedy for gain. They must hold the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. So again, they do have to have knowledge of God's word. Now, they may not be as in depth and things like that as the elder. Some are, some aren't, but they do at least have to hold the mysteries of the faith with a clear conscience, and let them to also be tested first. Hello, AD, glad to have you here. So then let them serve as deacons if they prove themselves blameless. Now, again, the word blameless here is the same as the elders, but then it goes on and it says, their wives likewise must be dignified, not slanderers, but sober-minded, faithful in all things. Then it goes back to let deacons each be the husband of one wife, managing their children and their own households well. For those who deserve, or for those who serve well as a deacon, gain a good standing for themselves and also great confidence in the faith that is in Christ Jesus. So that's what the deacons are dealing with. Now, I really don't know the church and all that's doing this one, just to be honest. I do know that they recommended 9 marks, which is a Calvinist group. So again, there's some we'll see what happens with that one. I'm not saying that Calvinists can't be right on some things, but anytime I hear it, I get a little weary. Because again, knowing the background and how it's set within Roman Catholicism, a lot of these other things that are taking place, I just sometimes wonder. And a lot of the other things that I've read and stuff, because again, I've been to quite a few deacon or councils, and the questions there, people just don't know how to ask questions, because again, they don't even know what the scriptures actually mean, say, and things like that. So in this way, hello, Free Grace KJV, glad to have you here listening in. So what's happening here is, first of all, they're going to gather the family information, like who is your family, what is your name, what is your spouse's name, what are your kids' name and ages, just basic information that way. Contact information. I will admit, if they're coming on board and that of getting this evaluation, technically these should have already been known. You really don't have to ask these questions. The church should have already had the physical address, the email address, the phone number. They would have already been talking with, because the person is involved and things like that. But again, that's the problem. They make it more like a business organization a lot of times, ask for these different things. And that can create a situation in which, I mean, you're not thinking biblically. Because again, these things should have already been known. There should have already been a relationship there, because you're not going to ask a person to be a deacon unless there's already a relationship. Because again, it's members of the church that is usually chosen. Now, I understand when it comes to the pastor, that's a whole different story, because usually they're looking elsewhere, because again, the church does not equip its members to a lot of times do the work of the ministry. And as a result, they're not equipping people who may be in that elder bishop leadership role and things like that, and that of looking at and moving up and things like that. So that's one of the issues dealing with the difference here. But yeah, they actually, when it comes to the deacon, you're always looking already within your congregation, because there are people who may have already come from other churches. They're equipped, and as a result, they start seeing this. Now, again, we got to be careful, because they have a life that they built and things like that, you got to make sure there's a spiritual aspect that's involved. So that's the other thing when you're looking at and dealing with. One of the other passages, and this is where, though it's not really deacons, but in Acts chapter 6, it says, "And in those days, when the number of the disciples were multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration." In other words, they were not getting their daily allotment of food and things like that. "Then the 12 called the multitude of the disciples unto them and said, It is not reason that we should leave the word of God and serve tables. Wherefore, brethren, look ye out among you 7 men of honest report, full of the Holy Ghost and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. But we will give ourselves continually to prayer and to the ministry of the word." So that's part of, again, this is more, as in Baptist circles, we call these proto-deacons. it kind of gives us still a helping and a realization that we got to focus on primarily the spiritual well-being of the person along with these other things. So, yes, I invite people onto the stream. I see Charles was saying something. Again, I have posted pinned thing on or pinned the StreamYard on. I've also pinned the or put it in the comments. Now, you have to be 18 years or older, and you have to show yourself in the backstage, but then you can put your icon on and I can bring you on if you don't want to show your face. I don't require you to have to show your face while on, just in the backstage where no one else can see you but me and doing that. So in dealing with this, so again, we are looking at these different things. The other thing that you might want to look at and stuff is if you're getting deacons, what is needing to be done? Because a person may have the spiritual well-being, they may not have the physical means or know-how or whatever to deal with that area. But that's been part of the problem also in many churches, is that there's not a lot of times a specific as to what the deacon, when he comes aboard, what is his responsibilities. And that's something that needs to happen also in churches, is that they need to, just as they have a job description for the pastor, elder, bishop, they also need to have a job description. And then if it's to a specific area, they need to find someone who is equipped for that specific area, along with the other general things that the deacons do all together. So these are the type of things that need to be looked at and stuff like that. Okay. Well, I'm here for about 3.5 hours usually. So you got, as you're able to, be glad to have you come on board if you're able to. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the first question is, are you currently a covenant member? Well, by using the word covenant, that's already reformed, because they want to make everything a covenant. That's part of the problem with the reform. Covenant this, covenant, let's make up a new covenant. Let's go ahead and make instead of doing things like that. So that's, again, trying to say covenant member. I mean, let's try to act spiritual by using the word covenant. And as a result, the Reformed don't understand covenants. That's part of the biggest problem to begin with. They do not understand covenants. How you know that is because they create the 2 to 3 fake covenants. That is the covenant of works, the covenant of grace, and some add in a covenant of redemption. You don't find that in Scripture. So as a result of that, they want to go in and they want to start making everything else, whatever they want, a covenant. And that's not the case. The other problem is you're trying to say, well, we're going to create this covenant, the church to this member, the member to this church. How many churches have actually done what they said that they would do? The reality is what should happen is a lot of these people that come on and they're supposedly in this covenant and nothing happens, they should sue the church then. Maybe go to their synod or whatever, sue the church, sue the synod, or whoever is above. Now, if they're independent, I'm making a joke about this suing part because they did not fulfill their part of this covenant. So this is one of the biggest problems with a lot of this stuff. That I find that a lot of these things are a joke. Even those that do what is it, bylaws. A lot of churches don't even go by their bylaws a lot of times, unless someone's trying to ramrod something through. But that opens up for actual lawsuits, because what's happening is by their bylaws and them not going by it, and then start emphasizing something upon someone, it creates nothing but problems. And that can create a legal situation. And let's face it, not everyone is going to be spiritual enough, and they will actually take it to court. And I've heard of churches being taken to court and the church lost. Because again, they have not structured themselves properly. Okay. Now, I'm going more beyond deacons and stuff, but again, that's the problem is they went ahead and they put it in a false way anyway. So, in dealing with that. Next question. How would you describe how you are living out the 6 core values of the mark of discipleship? I don't know what they are in this particular church, so can't answer that or even talk about that. Okay, volunteer involvement. Well, here's the thing. If a person is being asked or it was nominated, that means they've been involved. And again, they may list some stuff, whatever, because it's the question there. But the reality is the church should already be seeing these things. So do you have to be redundant about asking, so how have you been involved in our church here? We've been watching you. We've seen you. You've been nominated on. So what have you actually been doing? Because even though we're supposedly overseers and looking out and stuff like that, we need to know. So again, some of these questions, again, this comes down to the business mindset and things like that, rather than the already relational understanding. These type questions actually should already be done by those who are already in leadership, because they would know the person. So they'll know, okay, he does this, and this. Okay, so why do you have to ask him? It just, to me, I find it hilarious. Okay, describe your current involvement with a serve team. Okay, so again, one of those things. Describe your current level of leading others within our church. Now, I can see the leading part, even though seeing it, that can help where have the person more explain their leadership style and things like that. So that can have a decent question in that one. So who are you discipling in our church? Okay. I find many deacons don't disciple. They may say, well, I'm teaching a Sunday school lesson. But really discipling? No. Who are you sharing your faith with who is not a Christian? So again, that's can be a good question in dealing with, because again, that comes back to where it says they must hold the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. So as a deacon, this is one of the qualifications. So that would be a good question, as according to here. like I said, a lot of these questions the church should already be able to answer, write down, and things like that. Hello, Melody. How you doing? Let's see. I'm imagining how any of the disciples would have answered these questions. uh, yeah. Well, the problem is this is usually the starting point when you, and this is the business side of the church. We need to get our who the person is, things, and the church could have it already filled out, given to the people that are going to be on the who's going to ask the questions and stuff. That way they have already from the church, okay, here's what we already know about this person. This is showing that the church leadership has a relationship with the one they're looking at to be a deacon. See, that's part of the problem I have with stuff like this, is it's saying, we're going to get everything from you, but we're not going to have a relationship with you. That's kind of what this is saying. When the church should already have had a relationship with the person that they're asking to be a deacon, and they're going to know about this person because he's a part of the church already. He spends time with deacons and doing things, and with others. They're hearing the reports and things like that back from others. They're actually talking with him. So this is why I will admit I'm being snarky right now. But again, I look at the church and I'm like saying, you say covenant on this one, but why are you not already knowing about this person? Yeah. Yes, I would think so too. You think? I love that. Yeah. And so in dealing with this, again, this is the start off usually because, again, they're trying to get the person to write, put out different things, stuff like that. But the reality is do you really have to go through all of this? See, this is the problem. They're making it so business oriented that they're not showing a relationship with the person. Okay. So anyways, now they go ahead and they said digging deeper. Okay. Like this is really digging. Okay. Why do you aspire to be a deacon at the district church? So again, that's the church. We already know it's Reformed. Like I said, it uses the word covenant. It uses the word. It says for people to go to 9 marks. Yep, and I'm like, okay, I would not be a part of the church, but like I said, I wanted to have something with a bigger name, things like that, just so that, or a bigger thing where asking questions and stuff, we're going over this and try to look at and stuff, just to help people out if you ever are doing on a deacon nomination board type thing, where you look at things to see, things to look at. But again, a lot of this front part, it's good to have, but you ask yourself, what, as the church, how do I answer this about these people, this person? So that I think is more important than the person answering, because the church should already know the answers to these things. Okay. So again, who cares about the church name, but why do you aspire to be a deacon? Okay. Again, you got to look and see as to what a person is wanting to do and things like that. I will admit, I never aspired to be a deacon. But in many mindset is, okay, you're a deacon, now you move up to be a preacher type thing. But that they're two different offices. And I don't fit in the office of a deacon. I fit more, if I'm more in the office of an elder bishop and that type of mindset and things like that. So I'm on a whole different wavelength of thinking than I can be. And so I'm not that, I want to be as useful being a deacon and doing that. I'm better at dealing with being a Sunday school teacher, teaching classes, discipling, other things like that. More of what, and in dealing with that aspect, then I would be on, okay, what are all the physical needs that are needed in the church, in your building? What are the physical needs of the congregation? Things like that, by which now you're saying, okay, and focusing on and dealing with. When I didn't have time to deal with that, when I am, because I've been a teacher in Sunday schools. I've been teaching Sunday nights type things back in the day. Churches I've been, they would actually have the different classes. Like I said, I did evangelism. I did other type of things. I went beyond the basics, if you might say, on some of these, and in really equipping, training, discipling, things like that. I was talking to individuals where helping and developing and things like that. And so that was my mindset, because I've always had a mindset more on the elder bishop. And I don't have a mindset dealing with all the serving of tables, as Acts 6 said. And if I had to focus so much on that, I would not be able to prep and do what I really need to do as a teacher, doing multiple teachings, discipling, things like that. So again, I'm looking at my thing, but a lot of people would come up to me and say, hey, would you like to be a deacon? I'm like, no. And they look at me like, why? Well, deacons aren't elders. They're not in that area that would be in teaching and developing people spiritually and things like that where I'm at. Though they still have a good conscience of faith, they still are able to share, but I'm not in that category. I'm beyond that, and my skill sets and my calling and things like that don't place me in the office of deacon. So that's part of the things that you have to look at and see. So again, but again, it is a good thing, rather than someone saying, well, someone asked me to. What was it? I was in Sebring, Florida, working at a camp, and I'm looking around at other churches. And I went to this one Southern Baptist church, the big First Baptist Church of Sebring type thing. And I go to the Sunday school class, and I'm in the more of the singles group, because I'm happily single and all. And in doing that, what happened was we're going through the class, and they're kind of doing a facilitating type thing, which means no one has any real answers. It's, well, we'll just put it out this way. We'll put it out that way. We'll kind of guess this way. Well, you get someone like me in the class, I'm going to bring it back to scripture. And at the end of the class, they asked, would you like to teach class next week? This is the first time I'm there. No one knows me. And I'm thinking, I'm running from this church. This is not good. So it's things like this that you kind of look at and stuff, and you just scratch your head and you're like wondering, and thinking, oh my word. Okay. Again, is there anything from your past or present that you think you need to address with our pastors before continuing forward with the process of deaconship? And this is a good thing because, again, usually you're dealing with a committee and stuff. So you don't go to the committee and talk about maybe certain things. You will actually then go to the pastor, the elders, things like that, and talk with them. From there, they can decide and say, okay, everything's fine. And however that works out and stuff of whatever the person may be thinking or something like that. Then it says, church leaders seem to be tempted most often in 4 areas: money, sex, power control, and pride. Think back over the last 3 years of your life and briefly describe what you have learned about yourself in these areas, how you handle temptation. Well, again, money, I will admit, I had a lot of problem with money for some time. I never was taught how to use money. Well, I went through one of those things, but they made it so complicated I couldn't grab a hold of. Eventually, I got a hold of Dave Ramsey's books, things like that, and that helped out tremendously. So I've learned how to grab a hold of, get rid of debt, live on my own means, manage my money. And I talked about that last week or the week before. Hello, Len. Glad to have you here. So sex, again, you got to have control. You have to say to yourself, no. You have to get to a place where in your mind that you're not dwelling, you're not contemplating. If something that starts happening, you say to yourself, no. You get, a good thing is to stay busy. It's another good way to just not get yourself into trouble, even in this area. Now, when you are in a position, I haven't had so much of this issue, but there are others who have had this, where women are constantly flocking around the person, trying to other things like that. You got to be very careful. The stuff I've heard that happened, you have to have barriers. And that was one of the thing is I did a philosophy of ministry, which also dealt with protecting myself. Now, the other thing is in my ministry, I worked around youth. And working around youth, may I say, that's even more dangerous. So you have to put yourself into places that are in public where people can see. And that's not going to stop things that can happen. I know people, they did that and they got the accusation and it ruined them. And the person didn't do anything. I've heard of others, all they did was put their arm around, because they do that to everyone. Now, this was back 30 years ago, actually. Put their arm around someone, said, I don't feel comfortable. Well, that person went to jail. There's just all these different things that can happen in you. And the accusations and other things that can take place. Okay, power or control. Definitely. Like I said, the single pastor is a dictator. They have authority and things like that. Now, again, you might have the deacons and all that have more authority, but the pastor, senior pastor, has all this authority. And whatever, if you have a single pastor, they are going to be a dictator. They may be a benevolent, or they may be a third John type dictator. But the reality is a single pastor alone is always going to be a dictator. So the question is how do you work around to deal with this so that you don't look at the power, try to take it in control? And again, a lot of this has to do with being involved in the ministry. Okay. I guess someone, I didn't see that one. Yeah, Charles says, and just for correction, yeah, I mean one actual pastor, not a pastor that's single. That's a whole different issue of a single pastor. I don't have a problem. The Bible does not forbid pastors from being single. Now, when you're going through, you have the thing of when they have families and stuff, but it does not forbid a pastor to be single. Because if that's the case, Paul was an elder going into these churches and he was single. So you got to look at these things and stuff and what's happening. Okay, so let's see. And then the other one is pride. Well, I don't have a problem with pride. I mean, my mom always was saying when I was growing up, oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. So anyways, and of course, you know, as a teenager, you're trying to figure out who you are. You get a big head. The Bible does help you in this area of pride. And that is to actually be involved in the ministry. That's the thing, because ministry will humble you. You'll realize how quickly how much you can't do. And so, yeah, Charles says, my dad used to sing that. Yeah. And I'm thinking of, what is it? I think it's 1 Timothy 4. Let me bring that up, because I think that's a good verse to look at, helping with pride and stuff like that. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I think it starts with verse 6. I may have the wrong passage, but I'm thinking this is it. If thou put the brethren in remembrance of these things, thou shalt be a good minister of Jesus Christ, nourished up in the word of faith and good doctrine, whereunto thou hast attained. But refuse profane and old wives' fables, and exercise thyself rather unto godliness. For bodily exercise profiteth little, but godliness is profitable unto all things, having promised the life that now is, and of that which is to come. This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptation. For therefore we both labor and suffer reproach, because we trust in the living God, who is the Savior of all men, especially to those believe. Okay, so I think it might be this one here. Sorry. Let no man despise thy youth, talking to Timothy, but be thou an example of the believers in word and conversation and charity and spirit and faith and purity, till I give attendance to reading, exhortation, doctrine. And neglect not the gift that is in thee, which was given thee by prophecy, which with the laying on of hands by the presbyter or bishops. Meditate upon these things, give thyself wholly unto them, that thy profiting may appear to all. Nope, this is not it. Maybe it's 2 Timothy, but we're not going to look at it and stuff. I have the wrong one. But again, the best way of dealing with pride is actually doing the ministry. One of the amazing things is seeing how many ministers don't do that much. They really don't do that much. And in dealing with that, you need to be involved really in the ministry, working and stuff. And in doing that, your pride level is going to be kicked down because you're realizing, I can't really do this. I have to rely on God. I have to rely for God to open up, to show, to get my fellow church members. See, it's not just being like a pastor or elder or whatever, but it's understanding I need the help of my fellow church members, because why? They have things that I don't have. See, the idea of a single pastor being able to do everything is completely ridiculous. And that includes leadership. So that's why you need elders, bishops, plurality in dealing with this. Because the reality is the deacons are not qualified to be elder bishops. They're two different offices. All these different committees are not qualified to be elders. And when you have a church that is only looking at or only one pastor, bishop, elder, what's happening is you are limited to just what that person is capable of, which is not that much, because you need to rely on others and get others to help you. Same way with deacons. That's why in churches you have multiple deacons. Why is that? Because the ministry is too big for the deacon, for one individual deacon to do everything. It's the same way with the elders. And the reality also is they're two separate offices. It's not that the deacons are just under the elders and therefore they have to do whatever the elders say. No, the deacons see things and understand things and comprehend things that the elders will not understand whatsoever. And because of their authority of this office, they are able to go with the vision, if using a more modern term, the vision of where the church is going and all. They see that this is needed and they go ahead and they do it. They don't have to run to the elders to get permission. They may let the elders, now again, I believe they should let the elders know, hey, we're going to be doing this because of this, 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 and this. But they are their own office. And of course, as with many churches, you give them a certain budget and things like that. And you trust them to run that budget. So those are some of the things that dealing with. And so again, when you're dealing with money, sex, power, control, or control and pride, again, those are things that you have to be constantly aware of, knowing how to get away from it, knowing how to not have it dwelling in your mind. As I've stated, we always talk about in 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins. Okay, here's the problem. Most people dwell on their sin while they're confessing. So what is happening is you're still creating that mindset of the sin when you're trying to confess it. So the reality is it would be better when it says confess your sin, don't even mention the sin. God knows the sin. Don't even mention it. Leave it simple. God, I messed up on this. You know what I messed up. I need to do what's right. Your word says to do, and you pay attention to what you're supposed to do. Therefore, utilizing and stuff to transform the mind away from the sin to that which is right. And because you're doing it by faith in relationship, walking with Jesus and the Father and the Holy Spirit, that's pleasing. Because God wants you to walk with him when you mess up and things like that. Go to him and say, hey, I messed up. You know I did, but you tell me I'm supposed to do this. Help me to do it this way. Help me to keep my mind on this. Help me instead of realizing that it's all about me, it's others, if we were dealing with pride. Power control, again, instead of lording over and trying to tell people what to do all the time and stuff. Help me. Your word says that I should be having patience. Help me to have patience. Now, that's a tough one to ask, because you know what brings about patience? Trials. James chapter 1. So be careful if you're going to ask for patience. So just want to warn you. But sometimes you might say, God, I need these trials so that I can learn patience, so that I can be a better whatever you're doing, instead of and getting rid of pride. Okay. The next area is the application process and assessment is going to take a couple of months. Are you willing to commit the time to the process? What is your target completion date? Again, why? Why is it going to take a couple of months? Well, what might be happening is because of the legal thing, you got to vote them in. Okay, that may be the case, but can they be already involved? Can they already be approved? Now you got to have to wait. But a lot of them will. What they do is they don't do the vote, and then if you have the voting, then you do the actual. But they can already be involved, being used, being there. You can have more of a discipleship, which they've already kind of have, but have more of a discipleship in the process. That way you get to know them even better, things like that. Everyone gets to know each other, and you work and see as to what the person is going to do. Because it depends on your bylaws and stuff. So you might have to wait for the vote. Once you do the vote, then you got to then you do your ordination service. But it doesn't mean you can't have them already involved, already in the meetings. Now, there may be certain parts you might have to say, since you're technically not a deacon, we need to ask you to step outside. That's understandable, especially if you have to deal with a very sensitive issue or something like that, where you don't give them, because they're not a deacon yet. They haven't actually got the position, but they can be in this part that they're learning and stuff like that. So again, I'm looking at the church rather than, can you wait a couple months? No, it's like, yeah, because of our process. Now, are you willing to come and be a part and help out with the deacons and stuff in this time frame? So you get an understanding, you're already better prepared, and that when you do become an official deacon, you're now able to just keep going. So again, I'm having a problem with the church side with this question. Okay. Next question would be, again, it is a Q&A. I know there's only looks like not a whole lot listening in, which I kind of figured, being that it's Labor Day and all. But if you have any questions, comments, again, snide remarks towards me, of course, please go ahead. If you want to come a part of the show, be glad to have you. Things like that. So, in doing. Gregory, I did miss you. I do apologize. Lynn, I in doing that, I saw Charles went ahead and put in. I forgot to say hello to y'all because I saw that. So my apologies. Didn't mean to, but things, you know how you get distracted over stuff. Okay, and I do apologize for that. Okay, how would you articulate the mission and vision of the church? Well, I'm sorry, but a lot of times with the mission and vision and stuff, a lot of these churches don't really go by any of that. They make the statement, things like that, but unless the church actually has it, stays with it, really expounds on it, you can't expect a deacon, one going as a candidate, or even a congregation to be able to know. But if you are clearly showing, okay, we're going this direction right now. Now, let's face it, if it's one of those generic visions, I'm sorry, but that's not a real vision. That's just one of the generic statements you do as a vision statement. Oh, we're going to evangelize, and we're going to disciple, and we're going to love the Lord, and we're going to. That's a joke thing. That's you placing out a statement and not actually saying, okay, where is the Lord leading us as a church to go? What is, if we are dealing with discipleship, what are the things that we are going to do in the area of discipleship to develop people? These are the different things that need to be taken place and understood. And I'm sorry, but leadership fails in churches constantly on these areas. They don't really know where they're actually going. Most churches I've been in stay at the milk doctrine. They like it that way. It brings in enough people, things like that, but it doesn't grow people. And if they do have certain classes and all, it's only on the milk doctrine stuff anyways. And that's a problem. We need to actually get people to go beyond the milk. But what I found also is when people do get beyond the milk, guess what? They leave that church. Why? Because they can't get the discipleship that they need. They can't get the training that they need. And the reality is I'll admit, when I was doing this and stuff, I was a young little kid, 30 years old, in dealing with. So I'm helping people move beyond the milk and stuff, but they get the thing, but they don't allow me to help them. They look somewhere else for someone more older and mature, but a lot of the people I'm working with are older. So they want someone who is more older than they are or about their age helping them. They want someone who's been in ministry longer than I have. Now, again, I've been in ministry. I would say I started more in ministry when I was like 17, but not in a actual position type thing. 17 was in camps where I started as a counselor, moving forward and things, then school, doing preaching, teaching, other things like that, being on committees, other stuff like that. You're dealing with a whole lot of things. Then when I was at Liberty, I actually came as I was the administrative director, basically the second person in above the actual director, in which we dealt with 5 different ministries that had Altogether, we're about 500 people, not under each ministry, but 500 in altogether with the 5 different ministries that I worked with and we helped. And so these leaders would come to me with questions and things like that, and I'd be helping along, giving advice, bringing back to the Bible, other things like that. If I didn't have an answer, I'd go to other people, others. I get an answer and I come back to them, things like that, to help out and things like. So I've been doing ministry for a long time, just not in an official, if you may say, position in a church, but I have been doing ministry for a long time here. I'm 55, and I've been involved in ministry all this time, whether in local churches, in parachurch, other things like that. So I'm no longer a young kid, but I am able to deal with a lot of these things. Okay, now they're dealing with references. So again, they're getting a reference from your spouse. So they're wanting your spouse to give you a reference. And of course, this is if applicable, because again, it doesn't require a deacon, or may I say an elder bishop, to be married. But again, you can be dating, and therefore that's where usually in the KJV, it's if they're wives, but the actual word is women. So I'm not talking about their harem or whatever, but you might have a girlfriend because you're not married yet. And as dealing with, you have to look at that girlfriend and you have to ask, do they fit these characteristics that we read about the wives? Because if they don't, they're going to disqualify you from being a deacon or an elder bishop. So these are the type of things that need to be looked at. And then they're going to ask for a recent boss, all these different things. The problem I have is if you're asking for a most recent boss, you might not be able to be as vocal. I know when I worked at Macy's, you had to be very cautious when sharing your face with people because they can report you and you can lose your job. Now, I took things I said, but at the same time, it's not like your boss may know everything about this because you're not doing it in front of your boss. And there's just some different things and stuff that could be taking place where you're not able to, you kind of can share a little bit, but you might not be able to get into all that with that person because they're not going to allow it. So to ask for references from your current or most recent boss, you're not going to get a spiritual side from them, maybe. And that has a lot to do with the simple fact of where today is. Okay, then it's saying someone you have this disciple or currently discipling. Okay, and then now here's the thing. What do they actually mean by discipled or discipling? Because again, I do think that it might just be where you are an accountability partner with someone. So that allows for disciple that way. You might have someone that looks up to you, so they come to you, ask questions, you share there, and that could be discipling. It doesn't have to be this full type thing that a lot of times churches think of in dealing with discipling. Okay? And then church name of a previous pastor. Well, and you can get that. I'd have a hard time because all of them have passed away of the previous pastors and stuff like. But I know other pastors, though I weren't under them, but they're friends and stuff, so I could get recommendations from them. So again, it doesn't always fit. Okay, so tell us about your family. What is your current marital status? Well, mine is single and happy. I've learned to enjoy my singleness. I have learned to enjoy that back in my 20s, actually, because I figured married life was not going to happen for me because I looked at how things went, how different things, and I'm like, it probably is not going to work out. And I was right. It's not that I didn't look and stuff. It just didn't work out for me, and I kind of figured that way. So I mean, if you're going to be single, be happy about it. How long have you been married? Well, I got to confess, I am mocked married. See, my senior year at Northside Christian, the class had us go ahead and do a split into and had us do mock marriages, kind of going through, giving some understanding, things like that. So on the team that I was actually on, of course, guess what I was? The preacher. Well, what happened is the guy on the other team would not do it. He wouldn't be a part of it at all. So since I was friends with the girl, and they asked me, or they kind of encouraged me and asked me and stuff to be the groom. So I went ahead and I finally said, yeah. And I go ahead in there. And so we've been mocked married. Now, we weren't mocked divorced ever. So in that case, I'm still mocked married in doing that. So in that way, if you're going to put in how long have I been married? Since I was 17, it was. I'm 55. You do the math. It's like 40 or 30 something, 40 something years, something in there. I've actually been mocked married. And the thing is I'm still friends with the girl. We're on Facebook. I know her husband. I'm friends with him. Things like that. And it's like, and it's a big joke that around there about us being mock married. Okay. Now, second, if divorced, separated, or remarried, please describe the circumstances as in much detail as possible. And I can understand this one. Again, depending on one's view of divorce. Now, there are some that say you can't get divorced. Well, the problem is there are the exception clauses, the exception clause of fornication. So again, it's not just adultery. It could be other things that can create that allows for a divorce. Now, what should be happening is, in reality, still trying to bring things back, but it may not happen. And if it doesn't happen, I would hold the person is eligible to get remarried. Not everyone holds that view. Okay. Then you have 1 Corinthians 7 is that the unbelieving one. Now, unbelieving there does not have to mean not saved. It could actually mean a Christian that has moved into unbelief. And I'm not talking full blown or whatever, but they go to a place where they leave. And in doing that, that's an unbelief. They've left. They are unwilling to work, unwilling. That person, as it says, is free. And being free, that means they can get remarried also. So there are these different things that you look at, but is these the things that you go right after? Divorce, instant remarriage? No. That, again, you want to see if you can still bring about reconciliation and dealing with. I had to deal with a friend of mine. His wife decided to go ahead and commit adultery and then moved out and went with the guy. As time was going on, he met another lady. So again, that brings about another little thing. And I'm like, well, you got to kind of know what. And it turned out where his wife came back. Well, the lady knew if she came back, they no longer. So that was understood at the front. They got reconciled, brought things back together, and were together and stuff. I don't know what has happened after that because I've lost connection with them and all, but that's been part of the thing with one of the issues of dealing with. So it's not like you want to just instantly run off. And even in this case, because again, she did come back. Now, was he free? Yes. But being free doesn't mean you instantly dissolve everything. You might still be able to work things out. But we got to remember, according to Deuteronomy 24, the whole reason why God gave allowance for divorce was because of the hardness of mankind. So again, you could still have hardness, things like that, can't reconcile, and it's just not going to work out. This is just a reality. But again, you got to look at as to the reason why. And then does it allow for remarriage? There's a lot of issue and stuff that comes with that. And of course, there are those that say no divorce. There are those that say you can divorce, but remarry, but not remarry. Then you have those that are like me that hold you can't divorce for certain reasons, and then you can get remarried. So the only one they all agree on of remarriage is if the spouse dies, then the person is free to remarry. All of them. All agree with that part. So it's not as easy as dealing with when you're talking about these type of things. So I can understand in asking these questions, what's going on? Is it legitimate? And then will the church accept it? Because not all churches will accept, like for me being single. There's a lot of churches that will not accept a single elder, bishop, pastor. But unless it may be like youth ministry, but then they don't see that as pastoring a lot of times. And so there's a whole lot of issues and things that come with that also. Okay, if you have children, how has having children affected your marriage? Well, if it's anything like me, I cut off all my hair. Of course, I don't have children. So for me, it's because Florida is hot and humid. And if my hair gets even to combable, I feel like a hippie. So that's why I cut off my hair. It's just too hot and humid and things like that. But again, but I'm not sure if you have children, how have children affected your marriage? Well, again, why are you blaming the children? That's my problem with this question. Why is the church blaming the children? Why isn't seeing, okay, now as a parent, how are you parenting your children? Because again, it does talk about that of holding your household together. And in doing that, how are you doing this? Because the reality is children are going to be children. And the old joke is how the pastor's children are led astray by the deacon's children, and then the deacon's children are led astray by the pastor's children, and it goes back and forth and stuff. And what it is they're dealing with being in the spotlight and things like that, and they may not know how to handle this. And now, as parents, how are you helping them handle the fact that your dad, with your mom's help, is doing, and then you are at times accompanying us to do some of these things? When the people in the church are always looking at you, okay, how do you deal with this? As a family, as a child, this is what needs to be taught, understood. And these would be the better questions, not blaming the children as in, are your children ruly? Are your children little angels? Well, it depends on their age. They may... Remember, most of the time when you become a teenager, you're learning to become an adult. So there's going to be times you're going to challenge and other things like that. But it doesn't mean you don't disrespect your parents. You may do it wrongly, but you get taught how to do that rightly. And then if the parent won't even allow you to disagree and to learn how to disagree properly, that's a parent issue, not a child issue. So I look at this and I'm like, there's some horrible questions in this. So just a reminder, this is a Q&A time. So if you have any questions, comments, snide remarks, again, towards me, go ahead, put them in the chat. There hasn't been much things, so you don't even have to put @Q, @TLS, or hey, Kurt. You can just put it. I'll be able to read it. No, it's actually a question, and go ahead and share it, and we'll talk about it and stuff. Okay, next question. Whiskey 49, glad to have you. He says howdy. Just not now turning in. Well, glad to have you here. Is there a portrait stream simultaneously occurring? I'm just doing I'm in portrait. That's the thing. I'm not doing a full thing. When since I understand, may not see everything clearly, especially if you're on the phone. No, there is not a landscape. It's only in portrait mode. This is for some of the other streams we go to make it where it's showing and all, just to let you know. That's why I'm reading everything. So I know if you're on phones and all, hey, on my computer, looking at the StreamYard, I can barely read it. So I understand. I wish we could do more bigger, always bigger, things like that. But I'm told do it in portrait. So I do it that way. I was not the owner here, so I have to follow the owner. So anyways, but yeah, but if you have any questions, comments, snide remarks, again, towards me, go ahead and put them in. If you'd like to join, Again, I have pinned to YouTube, but then in the top of the chat is also the links. And again, you have to show your face in the backstage, but then you can put your icon on and I can bring you on. Okay, let's see. Okay, do both you and your spouses work? Okay, again, that's a good question and things like that. If so, please describe what your spouse does. Well, my spouse works in the bar. She mixes drinks. See, back in the day, you know, one of the first starting jobs I had, or actually my first actual job, was at a grocery store called Cash and Carry. And of course, one of the things we had to learn to do was stock certain things and then we would also do bagging. But at the end of the night, we could be like an hour later because we got to stock all this stuff, or we may need to go in and get it stocked because it's gone down too low. And so they have one of us go ahead and do that. Well, one of the sections we always had to stock was the beer and wine section. Didn't usually have to deal with the wine that much. I had to deal with it once, and it fell and went onto the ground, busted, and man, did that wine stink. And I even got it on me. And so it was like, the whole rest of the work time, I smelled awful. But one of the things I always had to do is that of stocking the beer. And so but then you're always hearing the sermons, not to drink, not to drink, not to drink, not to drink, though the Bible doesn't say that. And of course, I'm like, so for me, I would be answering, yeah, I worked as a bartender. Hey, for one of my science projects back in high school, what I wanted to do, because it was a Christian high school, I had wisdom not to, but what I wanted to do was a still. Somehow create my own little still, a workable still, and do a thing on fermentation of alcohol. And I would have loved to have done that. See, I know I'm warped. I think of ways of like, oh, how could I get myself into trouble? Yeah, it was like, what was it? At Liberty, one of the, it was one of the president election years. And of course, at Liberty, they would allow candidates to come in and speak. Usually it's just the Republicans that will come. Democratic candidates won't show up. Only if, I think maybe one did, but most of the time they would not. And I'm thinking whoever was going against each other, I think it might have been Clinton and someone else. But either way, what I wanted to do was I wanted to take a bumper sticker, put it on the back of Dr. Falwell's truck, that of him voting for the Democrat Party. Things like that. So again, I'm always thinking, how can I get myself into trouble? And then I have the wisdom of not doing it. Okay, enough telling on myself. Okay, let's see. But again, and what percentage of your income is supplied by each? I'm sorry, but that's none of the church's business. To ask, okay, how much are each of you? It's like, in your finances, if you're both working, are you actually communicating together and dealing with your finances and stuff? In other words, are you able as a couple to come together and work together? Not having, this is my finance and this is your finance. And therefore, we're bringing a separation in our marriage type thing. That's part of the thing of looking at. Gregory says this is a cult application. I agree, because like I said, this is coming from your Calvinist. It has for 9 marks, and in dealing with that, that's why I wanted to show some of this, and dealing with and how not really thinking this through. So I agree. This really is non-biblical in how this, in a lot of these questions and stuff. Okay, because like I said, I can understand is how do you work together since you got 2 incomes? How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you work together if you only have 1 income where the one spouse is working and the other is staying home taking care of the kids? That's the other thing you ask yourselves. And in dealing with, let's see, Charles asks, depending how you say it, telling your spouse you have a fiance can be considered a compliment. Or having a finance. Okay. I think you're having a finance he put in, but I'm thinking it's supposed to be spelled fiance as a joke. Okay, so anyways, again, I can ask, are both working? The reason why is if both are working, how do you think this is going to affect doing certain things and stuff? Especially if you have kids and being a deacon and things like that. So it's not that you can't do it, because she might work at home. Okay, she might. I'm sorry, I was reading Charles's thing. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. So, anyways, she may work at home. In other words, do a work out of the home. Do one of these things where selling something, whatever, and bringing in an income that way. So you have to ask yourself and look at and things like that as to how are you working this all together. You don't need to, the church doesn't need to know all the details. They just need to know, are you on board together in handling your finances? Do you talk to one another about all these things? Now, I'm not saying where maybe the husband, because the anniversary is coming up, he goes ahead and starts putting a little money away, but doesn't tell the wife. Why? Because he's going to buy whatever that anniversary gift for that year is, and be it more of a shock and things like that. Okay, that's fine. That's not really being deceptive, other thing, because she will do the same thing. But it's like even military. I hear with military wives, the husband is off in another country or whatever. That check, the majority of the check is coming to the wife. So what the wife does is she budgets and everything, and she starts paying off the house, all this thing. And when the husband gets back, it's like, guess what, honey? We're at a debt. Okay. So, and he's like, wow, because again, he's handing over to her, trusting her, maybe not always able to talk about things because of the secrecy or where they are, can't always get a phone call to, things like that. But either way, you have these different types of things. But the reality is are you working as one? Are you on the same wavelength and things like that? But again, like I said, I know a lot of military wives, they go ahead and do that. And they don't tell their husband. Why? They want it to be a surprise and say, look, honey, look what I did. Since you put most of the money in my control, because you're going to be away, see how I was responsible and I helped out the family. And these husbands, they come back and they're like, I love you. You did a great job. You things like that. Because again, he didn't have where he was. He didn't need money to spend. He needed a little bit. He may have kept maybe $100 or $200 a week, and the rest, or $200 for the month or less, or whatever it was, whatever is, and giving all to the wife. If he's in a barracks, got fed there, all that, he may said, okay, let me do $20 a week. That's it, just in case. And then if he didn't spend it, what happened is he would go ahead in and not take $20 or not take for $20 a week the next month out of the pay and give her the whole thing type deal. It's just all these different ways of dealing with this. So you have to ask, how are you working this together? But this question here, horrible. The church has no right to be asking. So, what percentage of your household income is supplied by each? That's none of your business. Okay? Yes, these questions can tick me off. Okay, let's deal with the next question. What are your hobbies and special interests? Well, I will say, as I always say, on holidays when I get the day off and all that, I go ahead and I try to blow up the world. You want to know why? Because I grew up in the 80s where the song always said, everyone wants to rule the world, and I don't want to rule the world. So I wanted to be like, what is it? 007, the bad guys were always trying to blow up the world. So I realized that. And as you can tell, I keep failing because I really don't do anything towards that. I just say it. Okay. But again, hobbies. Someone could like woodwork. Someone could reading. For me, a hobby is doing these StreamYards. That's my hobby. I enjoy doing these things, and it's my hobby because I have a job where I get money and stuff like this. I do this voluntarily because I like to be a part of doing this type of thing. So this is my hobby. Let's see. Whiskey 49 says hobbies. Some hobby we have every day. Pinky trying to take over the world. Yeah. Exactly. that Animaniacs. And of course, Pinky and the Brain on Animaniacs. Yeah, I love it. So again, everyone has their different hobbies and stuff. One of the things I like to do is go walking. Get outside. I live in a one-bedroom apartment. Enjoy it. I work here, things like that. But it's nice to just get outside. And I'm in an area where there's a lot of trees and stuff. So it's nice to see the trees. We have this huge retention ponds. And of course, there's ducks and stuff there. So you get to watch that. I go down to the dog park, which is about an hour away. So I walk. It takes about 50 to an hour, depending. I walk there, and then I walking around the dog park. There's the ducks, there's the dogs, there's the birds and other stuff that are there. That's my hobbies and things like that. So in doing that, because I like to go for walks. I like to enjoy. I like the exercise. I like being able to move and things like that. So in doing that, again, now they go and include also if playing video games and or surfing the internet, social media aimlessly has been an issue of time management currently or in the past. Well, I surf the internet. Okay. I'm on YouTube. I have multiple channels that I subscribe to, and I'm listening to them. That's one of the other things I can do is I'll go ahead and do a short thing, and I'm listening to it, and then you go to another thing. But I'm doing stuff while listening. So it's not like I'm only surfing. But everything comes through my computer. I don't have actual cable TV. If I'm watching a show, it's through the internet, and in doing things like that. Now I will admit, because I'm on the phones, my job is on the phones taking calls. I have my TV going on because I do have a TV. It's just hooked up to my, it's got a Bluetooth to my internet here. So what it does is I'll have a TV series going on, and I'll just let it go. And I've already watched this maybe quite several times already. But I like to do that because, again, it's a noise in the background. But two is I can look at it if I have a little bit of a break, and I know exactly where it is in the story rather than something new, because then I'm like, I have no clue what's going on, and it doesn't. So again, knowing where it's in the story, that's helping me in my work time and things like that. So when I have a little, whatever little bit of downtime I might have. So in doing that, that's why I have the TV on. It's to break the noise or kind of break the silence, because I do like to have some noise in the background when on the phones, because that helps to break what might be going outside, other things like that. But also, like I said, have a storyline I know. So all I have to do is turn it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember where that was. That okay, and then get a new call in, and I'm back to the call, and I miss another 8 minutes, 10 minutes. I get another call right after that. So I've missed whole programs and things like that. But at least it's noise in the background. Okay, yes, I know I'm just going into a lot of personal stuff and things like that. But what do you expect? It's Labor Day. Okay, let's see. Have you and your spouse always been faithful to each other without any improper behavior, either emotionally or physically? If no, please give an honest and candid description of the circumstance of any unfaithfulness. Again, I understand them asking about this, but this is like they're trying to pry every little detail. The way they're asking these questions, you don't have to pry out every little detail. You can give a little something and then focus, instead of focusing on what went wrong, focus on what they did to make it right again, and how this is helping them to stay this way. Let's focus on the thing of growing rather than having a mindset on our sin. And to me, that's kind of what's happening here, even in this question, and trying to say detail, be as honest and candid description. I'm sorry, you don't need to do that. You don't need to ask that. It could be something very, just enough to know, okay, this is the area we were having an issue with. But as a result, this is what we did, and how, and that of overcoming this and coming back together, and even become, and also what we do so that we don't go back to there. But this is what this is part of the Calvinist worm theology, is that even the Christian is still totally depraved, can't do anything. Again, this whole problematic of not knowing that God has actually changed a person, worked in a person to be able to where they can actually do good and things like that. Of course, they don't believe man could do good to begin with. Their whole idea is just warped. And that's where a lot of this stuff is coming from. Now, I'm going to admit, stay away from 9 marks. They're talking about stay away from them. They are nothing but a legalistic, cultish group, and they have caused so many problems in churches because of their legalism and other stuff like that, and getting questions like this. It's not good. I see. Whiskey asks, this seems like the phone directory I received from the current assembly I attended. 15% phone directory, 15% church history, and 70% bylaws. Yeah, this is part of the thing of in dealing with some of these things. And but again, I wanted to go over some of these things, but I knew with this one, I didn't read these beforehand. I will admit, I didn't read these beforehand, but I knew I was going to get upset and have a little bit of righteous indignation because of the way these are being stated and how they're being dealt with and stuff like that. Okay, next thing. What are you most thankful for about your spouse? What are his or her strengths and weaknesses? Okay, let's go ahead and play the Family Feud and get those weird answers and stuff. Now, again, this here is still a again, why are you asking for their weaknesses? This is, again, this is, the question is, if you're going to ask, okay, about the wife, is the wife dignified? Is she not a slant, or is she someone who doesn't slander? Okay, is she sober-minded? Is she faithful in all things? Okay, this is the focus. Trying to ask these other type of questions is like, well, first of all, don't you already know them? Are you trying to do marriage counseling now? Or are you trying to interview a gentleman for the deacon and then the spouse to make sure that she is qualified in these areas? This is what we need to stick with what Scripture says. Again, the Calvinists always say sola scriptura, sola scriptura. Why aren't they sticking with the Scripture? Because they really don't believe it. Sola scriptura is just prima scriptura. Okay, let's go ahead and, but again, I can understand what are the strengths? What are you thankful about your spouse? Again, if you love your spouse, you're going to be thankful for her. It's going to be easy to come up with stuff. Even if you are a guy that don't speak a whole lot, you will come up with stuff. Because again, you'll be thinking of all the different things that she does. And what may happen is you might just get tongue-tied because of all the great stuff she does. So again, what are the strengths of your marriage? How have you used your marriage to help disciple others? In other words, are you tag teaming? When one gets tired, the other one comes in and then gives them a body slam and all that stuff. Again, I understand they're trying to get this. I guess they're have a huge emphasis on discipleship, and I don't know what that actually means according to them. But this could be just asked: do you guys partner together when discipling? These are two separate questions and all. Okay. What do you find most difficult about being a godly husband or wife? Again, I don't know if these are really needed questions. This is more to marriage counseling and stuff like that than it is for being the office of deacon and his wife partnering with her. Are there particular areas of a marriage you find hard? Who doesn't? I mean, okay. Wife to husband. Husband comes home. He always takes off his socks, never gets them into the laundry basket, just right next to it, because he throws them. Wife have to come in. So are you supposed to mention, I find that hard. I have to deal with that. My husband acts like a 6-year-old at times. My wife don't get my humor because she's always at a 12-year-old stage and higher, where I'm at a 6-year-old. And she's always rolling her eyes thinking, oh, here he goes again. I'm sorry, but again, are there particular areas of marriage you find, okay? How does your spouse feel about your desire to be a deacon leading in our church? That's a good question. Technically, I think the spouse needs to be in there also with him. So, and you could ask the spouse that. And then ask the husband, you agree, or in dealing with, or however, you don't have to ask the husband, or in dealing with that, or you can ask the husband, which is going to be the deacon, and then ask the wife, is he correct? Type deal. Not that you're questioning him, it's just you're making sure, is that what he's saying is what you would say? Because again, they're two different people too. And sometimes guys don't always say it in the same way the wife would. And of course, the wife doesn't always say it in the way the husband will. Man and wife are different. Or a man and a woman, and dealing with. So again, but this is a good question here. And in what ways does he or she participate with you? I think that's a good question. Because again, she has to be participating in some way. She may go with him, especially if it's with a lady and she goes with. How is she? Is she praying for him in this area and in the moving and stuff? There's just these different things that you can look at and stuff. But again, that would definitely refer to the wives. And it would be good for a wife to be there to be supporting of her husband while he's being asked these things. And when it comes to the wife's questions, because there should be wife questions, or maybe even if it's a girlfriend, have her in there with you, with you if you're going as a deacon. That way she's hearing what being asked, how you're answering and stuff like that. And then she can answer on there, and or him and her can answer, so that what is happening is they can show, are they coming together? Now, again, because again, it's these women. Because if they do get married, then it's going to be this full thing. Now, if they don't get married, they decide it's not real, marriage is not going to work out, then what happens? That's where part of the thing is of trying, and of course that may turn into needing marriage counsel, may affect deaconship, depending on how things actually work and dealing with. Okay, Lynn says, as a woman, I think all men have certain 6-year-old traits. Maybe this is why I'm single. Yeah, it's my theory. I believe men play is normally between maybe 5 to 8 years old. And women's play are more around 12 years old, 12 to 14. Ladies, you have a lot more sense than us guys. It's just a reality. And we men, it's like if it wasn't for the grace of God, we'd be already dead as kids with the crazy stuff that we did. I mean, I look at multiple situations. I'm thinking, if it wasn't for the grace of God, I should have already been dead. But God showed his mercy upon a thunkhead like me. And I actually had better sense than most of the kids I was around. But yet, I'm still a guy. My play is maybe a little bit higher because of having better common sense, but not much. Someone may be a 5-year-old. I may be a 7-year-old. It's still enough to get you killed. So thank you, Lynn. You're correct. Not about the maybe not being the single part, but at least us guys. Okay. Okay. So then we have describe a time when the demands of ministry put a strain on your marriage or family life and how you resolve that issue. I think that would be a good question because, again, this is with any type of thing. In dealing with a regular job, this also deals with other volunteering things. And what happens is there may be multiple things happening, and you have to pick and choose as to what you're going to do. Being single, I didn't have to worry about a wife. But a lot of the fellow pastors I worked with had wives. So again, I was asking the wife when, like, if we're going off on a weekend type thing, I go ahead, I would ask Wyatt. I said, hey, is this okay? I don't want it to interfere with your marriage and things like that. And they come back appreciative that I'm concerned about their marriage. Because forget the ministry, the marriage is more important. And if it didn't work out, I'd be saying, look, you stay home with your wife. I'll go by myself, things like that, because if I'm fine with that, but you need to be home. But the reality is the people I were around were good husbands. So no, it was not an issue. It was not a problem. In fact, I told one of my friends, because I came up and I spent a lot of time, I said, hey, are you going to allow her to have a weekend with her girlfriends and stuff like that, since I'm taking up all your time here? It's like, yeah, she's going to have her time. So, because again, she was left home more with the kids. I think they only had one at the time. And what happened was, and so again, and he's a good father, so he was able to take care and stuff. So in doing that, she could go off and have time with the lady folks and all, and enjoy herself and stuff like that. Okay, finances. Okay, let's see how bad these questions are going to be. In your marriage, who is responsible for the family finances? No offense, if they don't say both, there's a problem. One may be more responsible than the other, but both need to be involved in knowing what's going on. Okay, briefly describe what roles you and your spouse handle, either shared or individually. So again, the wife may be more of the budgeter. The husband works, goes ahead. They work on the budget. They work within their budget. Okay, the husband goes ahead and buys things. He makes sure the wife gets the receipts. Now, if I was married, I'm sorry, I cannot work with receipts and all that stuff. I can do it, but it drives me nuts doing all this, because basically all you're doing is you're doing books, accounting books, and I hate accounting books. I hate doing this, doing that, doing the other thing. It drives me nuts. I can do it, but it drives me nuts. And so that's one of the reasons why a lot of this stuff of even like the 4 envelope thing or the different envelopes, I got this, you put in your receipts, then you go ahead and write everything down. I could not do that. And that's part of the problem. Some people cannot do that. And since I didn't have someone who has the desire and ability to do that, I could not. I had to learn a different way of being less detail, but still controlling my money. So in dealing with that, I can understand. Now, as a single person, it all falls on me. So again, if I don't get something done, it's because I didn't do it. But then you prioritize and you're like saying, do I really need to do this? Can I put it away? Can I not worry about it? Is it necessary? So you focus on the things you really need to do. And then those things you don't, you're like, oh, well, that's just the way it is. And it's no big deal. But again, that's my life. If I bring in a wife, if it ever happened, then it's going to be a learning of doing different things. Because I'm going to have to work with someone else and not just be me. And again, if that happens, you work to do it towards that way. That's just how it is. You get a roommate. Same thing. It's not going to be on a marriage level, but still, there's things you work out, like cleaning, who does dishes, different type of things like that. So, because again, there's just those certain things that need to be done. I know with growing up with my brother and I, what is it? I hated doing the bathrooms. Not because of cleaning and all. It's just I was so tall, and then that of trying to get down under and this, that, the other thing. It just I didn't care for doing that. It had nothing to do with the fact of you actually have to clean. That was not a problem for me. It was the fact that I was just so tall and trying to get behind the toilet and clean back there and get on your knees and do all this other stuff. I don't like bathrooms. Now, I do it, but I don't like it. So growing up with my brother, I would trade off. And I say, you do the bathroom, I'll do this and take some of his stuff. He's like, okay. Because I could get all that stuff done just about the same time he got done with the bathroom. So it wasn't that big of a deal for me and in dealing with. So again, you work off these trades and stuff because he was shorter, so he did a lot better in getting down on his knees, getting into the crevices, things like that. So I did a lot of dusting. I did vacuuming. That of the whole house, where he would do the bathroom. Now, we didn't have a huge house. That's the other thing. But at the same time, that's how we would trade off things and stuff like that. Okay. Let's see. So anyways, have finances been an area of friction and tension in your marriage? I think that's a good question to ask. That's a general question. Again, I'm not saying they have to go into full details and all, but have they? If this is an area of tension and all, is there a way where we can help or get you to the place like to help you in dealing with this? Okay. Has there ever been a struggle with credit card debt or any other kind of debt? And I would have to say on my part, yes, there has been. But fortunately, was able to finally get in control, get rid of the debt, things like that. I praise God for what he did to help me out. Like I said, even with Dave Ramsey and doing and that of mastering my money rather than my money mastering me. But again, it had a lot to do with I was an idiot. I had no clue, didn't know what I was really doing, and I was living over my means and other stuff like that. So was not a good thing. Again, as it says, having debt means you're a slave to a master, and that slave to that debt master. Okay. Now again, or any other kind of debt. Again, you could be talking about a house. You could be talking about cars. All these different type of things that could be some type of thing. Okay. Including your total current credit card balance, if you are carrying a balance, not if you pay it off monthly, If you have a balance larger than 2,000, please answer the following so we can get a greater understanding of your situation. So again, they're going to go in because what they're doing is again, and I can kind of understand a little bit about this, because if they don't have control of their finances, they're going to be put into place of leadership that deals with finances, deals with people, and it can give them opportunity to do stuff they should not be doing because of their position. They go into homes helping out in certain ways. They see something, they can grab it. Other things like that. There's just the temptation and all, and that could take place. And I'm not saying that they may do that, but at the same time, you got, as church leadership, you kind of got to look at this type of stuff. Okay. So again, what is your credit card balance and what is your debt to income ratio? Okay. Are you still adding to this amount? In other words, are you going further into debt, or are you getting out of debt? Because again, if you're going further into debt and all, then being a deacon, you're not qualified. What you're needing to do is actually get help to get you where you control and get out of debt. Okay. What is the interest rate that you are paying on your credit cards? How many cards are there? Again, the interest rate is not really the issue. Now, the reason why I say it's not, because most interest rates are high. Now, if you're able to do a balance transfer to a lower one or something, yeah, but again, you still have the debt. The question is are you able to get this transferred to a lower interest rate? Or are you already at a low interest rate? There are times you can get a zero balance. Yes. Does that move your balance up a little bit? Yes. But at the same time, you're able to really dive in and not deal with that higher interest, because it's still going to be a lower upfront fee for the transfer than it would be for that high interest. So in reality, you reduce the amount, and then you just, and as with Dave Ramsey and all, you just snowball. And some people, it may not be doing the lowest to highest. For some, you can have the mindset of taking the highest interest, attack that first, and then keep going down with the next highest interest. They don't need to play the games, but I can understand where he's saying sometimes having those little victories, because you paid off and now you take what you have quickly and you can put it in and really start. I can understand that. And some people need that type of thing, but others, they actually don't, that doesn't encourage them. So they can take the highest interest. It may take longer, but they're looking at the fact that they're saving money, or they're getting rid of the higher interest, and therefore they're not paying out as much in the long run. And how they think is in a different way, and that would be perfectly fine also. I will admit that was, when I was in debt, that's actually how I dealt with it. I dealt with more of the higher interest than the smallest amount, because I understood how that was, and I just wanted to get the highest part, and then if I could ever transfer, I did that, and then I'd switch it up to whatever the highest is and start going that way and stuff. Lynn says, I pay my credit card off before it comes due. I never paid interest. Yeah. Again, I never learned that until Dave Ramsey. I never really had an understanding of that in my life, because that's part of the thing. And again, I'm not doing the Deacon thing, but I'm being more transparent and stuff of my own life. I had to learn to be a master over the cards. Now, I'm not a Dave Ramsey where you don't use credit cards. I will admit that. I think credit cards can be very useful, especially if you're going on a trip or things like that. But like you said, if pay it off when you come back. Debit cards, especially if, like, I'm with a credit union, that presents a problem, because when you deal with credit unions, and I love credit unions, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to credit cards, I'd rather have a regular credit card than a debit card, than a credit union one, because they're watching it so much. And any type of change, if you don't tell them or whatever, and even if you tell them, they'll shut it off on you and it'll create a problem. Second of all is I only have one debit card. So one of the other things that I've learned is you need to have a backup. There, one of the things, like I said, I work in banking, on the phones with banking, and I get so many calls where they're only depending on that one debit card or that one credit card or whatever it is, and it doesn't work. And they don't have a backup, and they're stranded someplace. They can't get gas, whatever it is. Then and because I can't deal with it in my department and the other department isn't open, they have to wait for a call. They then go into this stupid sob story about, then how do I feed my kids? Well, why, when the card was working, why didn't you buy this stuff already? Why are you waiting until now? See, this is what's going through my head. I'm not saying it to them, but I know they're lying. They're trying to bring about a sob story to get me to help. Well, I don't deal with sob stories. To me, I know they're lying. And if they're not lying, I assume they're lying. Just because I've heard it too much. And I'm not one of these emotional type people that kind of like, oh, I'm like, you're stupid. Let's see. They are necessary. I am credit union too. They gave me a visa. I just bought a house. This helped me. I'm 65 years old on Social Security. Yeah, and I understand that. I know with Dave Ramsey, he's always saying with that, but the reality is most places only deal with the stupid credit score. And if you don't have a credit score, they're not going to give you any loan. And yes, Dave Ramsey says if you can just buy the house right off, that's the best. But that's the one thing he does go against and saying you go into debt for, is buying a house, because again, it doesn't lose. Well, I can't say that, but because again, if you buy it on a high market and then it goes down into a low market where you sell it, you're going to lose money. But again, for the most part, housing does not lose money. Having a house, for the most part, there are other things that can have that. So yeah, I agree. So again, but at the same time, I'm very, I want to have that backup. I've been in that situation. The debit card didn't work. I needed pay, so I brought out the Visa. And the debit card did not work because I didn't have money for whatever reason. Then I bring out the credit card and dealing with that and stuff. So you and like Lynn said, the key is to pay it off. You got to master even your credit card and know what you're doing and all, and then pay it off. See, I didn't learn that. I kept living off the credit card, doing the credit, got myself into trouble. I had to get out. And now I'm in control of the finances and stuff. So that I'm thankful for that. Okay, let's see. Okay, are you still adding to this amount? And that's an important thing. Now, here's the another issue that I had to deal with for me was doctor stuff. You know, back in the day before I went carnivore, starting from about age 30 to about 49, I think it was, about every two to 3 years, I had kidney stones. And in doing that, what happened is I had to go, and you can't get to a doctor because it was at night. So you go to the emergency room. Then now you have to deal with all that and stuff. And that was one of the things that affected and caused me to go into some of the debt. Not all of it, because I was stupid also. But the thing is you got to look and see as to what's going on there. But yeah, as Lynn says, you got to live in your means. Don't live above your means, live in your means. And I completely agree. Okay, let's see. What is the interest rate? Again, that you don't need to ask that, because the question now is upon these general things, you can say, I'm sorry, but what we need to do is we need to get you into financial counseling so that you can get this, get out. You're not eligible to be a deacon or an elder or something like that. You're not eligible. We need to get you into this where you can get a handle on your finances, because you're already a slave to someone else. And to be doing, and so volunteering for this and doing these things, this is going to create a problem. So yeah, no, you don't need to know this. This goes into that of moving into the counseling, not the questions. And see, this is part of my problem with some of these, is they're going into things and they're not being wise. They're meddling where they're not supposed to meddle, and they can get enough information to know, okay, you're not qualified, so we don't need to know this. Now let's go ahead and deal with counseling, financial counseling, and get you to a place. Let's get you into Financial U, which or Dave Ramsey or one of these other ones, or something where you're dealing with. We'll have people. We have a person here that can help you set up and things like that. You learn how to do this. You set up and we can and dealing with this. And we're going to first get you out of debt before you can become leader. And it's not just get them out of debt. It's actually, okay, and we're going to then say, okay, we're going to give it another year after you get rid of your debt. That way we can see, how are you able to still manage money? Have you learned the principles? And then you have the guy that you're working with, he's working with you afterwards to kind of help you now to put away, deal with retirement, deal with getting more money, things like that. And this would be good for churches to do a lot more with its members and all, because if they can get the members out of debt, it's going to become a lot better and stuff. And also you'll find out those who are really actually willing to be more like Christ and do the things of Christ versus those who are just going to be lazy bums. Because let's face it, there's a lot of church members that are lazy bums. Okay, now what is the plan to pay off your credit card? Again, I can understand. You could just say, I'm following Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps at this point and stuff. But again, you want to ask and stuff and see, do we really want to, like I said, do we then go ahead and say, even if you're doing this or whatever, are you eligible to be a deacon? What have all the expenses on these cards been in relation to? I do think that's an important thing. Is it medical? Okay. That could be something where a little bit more understandable. Is it on frivolous junk? Well, now you have a problem here and you got to deal with that problem. Is it on a hobby of yours? Well, then maybe you need to give up that hobby until you're able to actually afford it. And these different things like that you have to learn. Okay? Are you presently living within your means or still using credit cards for purchase? Well, again, they've asked this over and over. They really don't look at it. I don't think they're paying attention to what they're writing, because they're saying the same thing over and over, and which this could have been done in just 5 questions. Okay. Let's see. What do you feel was the root issue that led you to the amount of credit card? Well, again, that's not needed here. Because depending on, that may be asked if they have a smaller amount. What's causing you to have still $800 on your credit card? Okay, I had this emergency expense. I did that. I'm paying it off in 2 months. Okay, then you really, I can understand that, because you didn't have the money for whatever it is. But now you have to ask yourself, okay, why do you not have anything in savings put away and stuff? It could be different things. Again, it's just, but a lot of these questions are not needed to go into this type of detail when dealing with asking deacons. What you need to do is find out, are they in debt? How kind of, is it a huge amount of debt? And then saying, okay, with this, how long do you think it will take to get out of debt? That's really the questions that you need to ask. You don't need to go into the details of all this specifics, because you're not being a financial manager to them. You need, then you say, look, as you're not qualified to be a deacon because of this. What we now need to do as a church, especially if you're going to call yourself a covenant. Yes, I'm being snarky again about covenant. But in saying that, then we need to get you into here to have you be able to get control of your finances. See, I only asked 3 questions. And I already knew not in this, you didn't have to ask all these different questions. Okay, let's see. Do you see this as an area of concern, and explain any area of repentance in this area? Okay. Again, is there a real need to do that and ask this? And is it during this deacon question time that this is what really needs to be asked? Okay. Do you believe that this area of your life is now above reproach as you pursue the role of a deacon? Well, if they're still in debt and stuff, then no. If they have all this problem and stuff like that, then no. But if they're out of debt and they have the different things, then they may be. Because again, to be a deacon, you got to be able to control certain finances, that finances within, because let's face it, ministry cost. And I do, and so in dealing with that, there's cost to doing ministry. And so you have to pay that cost. Okay. Do you have any other areas of debt? And again, that would be, what has been your experience with personal finance? But again, I'm not asking too much and stuff. Do you have life insurance? Again, why do they need to know that? Okay. At least with the questionnaire. Do you have a buffer of liquid money and savings in case of an emergency? Well, again, do you have a retirement investment plan? What percentage of your gross income do you give tithe to your local church? What if you are not currently giving 10%? Please explain in detail why. Well, I'd be telling them why, because again, the Bible does not tell me I have to give 10%. You're a legalist. But anyways, this is part of the thing of looking at and stuff. Again, a lot of this is just nosiness. This is what the Bible speaks about, of the elder not lording over. So what is happening is you're dealing with this committee, this questionnaire committee and all this stuff, because this is pretty much the committee, and they're now lording over a candidate and trying to get every little details and stuff where they don't need to have. They need to know, are you in debt? Okay, that's a yes or no. Is it debt? How is it? Is it above 2,000? So in doing that, okay, if they're, because that's their number they put, 2,000. If it's above 2,000, you're not eligible. Unless there's a clear reason of, okay, I did this, but I'm paying it off. I'm paying it off here. I'm waiting for the more closer to the due date, and I'm paying it off. Okay, so then technically, who cares if you had 2,000 on there? You're not in debt. You're just waiting to transfer money. You're utilizing your credit card to transfer money back and forth. That's not debt. So again, you might have to go through school again and understand what is debt and what is transfers of money. Okay, well, I know I've gone through a lot, things like that. Normally I'd keep going on, but I'm kind of tired of going over this, to tell you the truth. Right now, we'll deal with theological and beliefs the next time, unless we get a lot of other questions, because remember, this is a Q&A time. But I knew that being that it's Labor Day, we won't have a whole lot of people listening in. We won't have, because people were busy doing family stuff or doing other stuff or whatever, and they get tired. They don't want to. And let's face it, these questions were quite irritating. And so in dealing with that, we'll go on with the theology and belief, dealing with this next time. Unless, like I said, since it is Q&A, having other people ask questions, things like that, I'm going to go ahead, like I said, since I've worn myself out with these questions. Oh, man, I feel like but again, if you're dealing with going through financial counseling, these are great questions. But to be a deacon, these are horrible questions. So far, what is it? We may have gotten 5 out of all of these questions that are actually decent questions. Most of them can be brought down to maybe to just 5 questions, not going into full detail, but asking, do you that I mean, just simple things to kind of say, are you eligible in this area? Let's face it. Again, these people should be kind of knowing some of this already. So having them write all this stuff down, things like that, I'm just like, they're wanting to lord over these people's lives. And that's not the purpose of this. Remember, what was it? Acts chapter 6. Let's go back to there. He says, wherefore, brethren, look ye out among you 7 men of honest report. Again, honest report is basically meaning to be a witness, to bear witness, affirm that one has seen or heard or experienced something, or that the one knows it because taught by divine revelation or inspiration. So again, honest report. In other words, they have a good testimony, full of the Holy Spirit. In other words, they're following after the Holy Spirit, walking in the Holy Spirit. They're walking by faith. They're looking and wisdom. Okay, whom we may appoint over this business. So again, the 12 basically told the people, you pick out seven men. Here's the criteria, put them into place. And then it goes ahead in verse 5 and it shares the 7 men. Okay, so again, they already knew these people. Since they already knew these people, they didn't have to go in and ask all these tons of questions. And like I said, I kind of went this way just so to look at and stuff. But to kind of say also, we don't, some do not really think these things through. Now, if we were more focusing on what's the criteria and asking those things, then I'd be fine with those questions because I've done it myself. But they're going into so much other things that in doing that. What was it? One of the deacon ordinations. One of the things is that they are to have their house in order, rule over their house. And the deacon, he had a 2-year-old. And I go over to the whole thing. We go ahead and said about, so do you actually have rule over your house? And I go, and we know the answer is no. And we got a good laugh and stuff like that because I knew the guy. he has a 2-year-old. Of course, he doesn't have rule over his children on every little thing. They're 2 years old. They're running around. They're doing, they're being a 2-year-old. But I knew he was making sure, as much as possible, safe. That of teaching, even at that age, things like that. I knew he was already doing that. So I made a joke. Why? So that we could, because again, it doesn't have to be all serious either. You can have some fun. And we all knew the guy. And by saying that, and of course, all the others were married or were married, and they're like, and everyone had a good laugh. Because again, it wasn't that much of an issue, because technically they were just going through, on this one, we were more going through just because we have to do that by the bylaws. The reality is we already knew he was qualified. So, and I used it as an opportunity, since I'm more of an eldership type thing, to teach these other deacons on how to go to God's word and ask questions via God's word to see if a person is qualified. And I knew he was, because know why? We've talked. We did ministry together. We did things together. So I knew the guy. I knew his wife. I didn't really know the kid that well. But again, I mean, he was all there. But again, I don't get to know 2-year-olds that well, to tell you the truth. But anyways, in dealing with all that. So it's quite an interesting thing of this. So like I said, we'll deal with the next thing and all afterwards. Want to give one last chance. Any last questions, comments, snide remarks? And of course, snide remarks towards me. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So like I said, since I've worn myself out on those questions, I really rather just out. If you guys had if people had questions, I'd rather deal with that. But since we don't, I don't want to deal with those questions anymore today. So for those that did listen today, I want to thank you very much. I know that it's Labor Day. A lot of people are out and things like that, but I thank you all. I decided to go ahead and do this anyways, because again, I enjoy it. And people can listen later also. That's one of the great things. Also, for those that will listen, want to thank you. If you like the program, hit like. If you have, again, any questions or whatever, you can either put in the comments. I do check. Or you can save them for next week and ask the questions next week. Write them down so you don't forget. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Hit the bell. That way you're reminded of or get notifications of us coming on, because though we do have our set courses, like me on Monday and Thursday, PB is on Tuesday, but again, Charles comes in at different times. He's doing his prep work and all for that. I did a special yesterday, and then you could have other times doing specials and stuff like that. So it's just all these different things that could happen. So again, since we are down to the end of today, I want to thank everyone. Have a wonderful night, since that's where I'm at right now. If it's day, have a wonderful day, whatever time you're at. Thank you again, and good night.